I realized the chaos I got to actually go after was my internal chaos. I was tempted to externalize it, make it all about here, but I had a job to do. And if I was going to do that for the very first time in that moment, there is zero chance I would be able to pull that off. I actually needed to prepare myself in such a way that I had something I could do that would be helpful for trying to harness the chaos. Worrying actually perpetuates chaos. That's not what we're interested in. We actually want effective ways to deal with it. So my job is to orient my life in such a way so that when these very predictable things start coming our way, we have an opportunity between now and that moment to ready ourselves so that our response isn't to go to these default settings, but to go to these higher order skills, these capacities to deal with chaos in a way that both gives you a chance at being effective and guarantee you will not feel comfortable as you're doing it. As humans, we prefer the path of least resistance. We crave convenience, the payoff without the price. But when our lives revolve around comfort, it doesn't deliver. Living in perpetual comfort leaves us weak and asleep. This podcast is an invitation to flip that script, to choose the unlikely path, to get the life you really want through voluntary discomfort. This is Strong and Awake. I'm Dane Sanders.
So Dane, we're smiling and laughing coming into this episode because of a conversation we've just had. But I think the topic of today's episode might not feel as lighthearted for a lot of people. What we want to talk about today is in this theme of everyday obstacles. I want to talk about worry. And worry is something that I think a lot of us carry. I'm reminded of the song by Daniel Johnston, Worried Shoes. If you've ever heard that song, he's part of the like outsider music. If you've ever heard of it, it's very like quirky, out there, not super palatable at first listen, but I encourage people to watch it. We'll link it in the description. But he talks about like worried shoes and putting them on and traveling and tying knots in the laces of his worried shoes. And then finally coming kind of in the final resolution of the song, he talks about learning the difference between, worry and caring and taking off these shoes. And I think it illustrates something that I'd love to dig deeper into. And it's like our misconceptions of worry. Like, what are we trying to accomplish in worrying? We're obviously reacting and responding to situations with worry, trying to accomplish something. And I think a lot of time is spent on, techniques for finding inner peace and calm and some of these things, which I think can be resourceful for sure. But I'd love to go further upstream. Like, what is worry? Why do we worry?
Yeah, like what are we up to here?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll definitely get to that punchline. But I love the way you're framing this up, Mitch, because first of all, it acknowledges that listeners, especially ones that are feeling things really acutely right now, they're really under it. They're suffering. It's terrible. And we're acknowledging the existential reality of what it's like to worry. It's a really difficult experience. I think about worry as a dad. I think about worry as a mom. I think about worry as a neighbor or a friend. I think about worry about what seems like existential threats, worries about AI, worries about job security, worries about money, worries about we have so many, food insecurity for some people. It's remarkable to me how many things worry is sticky. It attaches to everything. It's like Velcro. And it is a phenomenon in the human experience that, first of all, we just want to acknowledge if you're in the midst of a season of worry or really acute worry, we're not making light of it, even though we came into the conversation in a lighthearted way. But we hope by the end of this conversation, the load might be lightened just a little. So that's the ambition with today's thing. And the topic of this in context of, everyday obstacles, things that get in the way of human flourishing, and how might voluntary discomfort find its way into your antidote to worry is really what I want to address today. So that's the setup. But to get there, I actually think it'd be helpful to tell a little story, a little bit of lore And it comes from a quote relative to this world leader, a guy named Nelson Mandela. So for those of you who are too young to remember or don't know the story, Nelson Mandela was an oppressed political figure in South Africa, and he was wrongfully imprisoned for 27 years. And after 27 years, he was released. He was pro-integration. He was against apartheid, which is a separation of races within the context and this whole caste and class system. And when he was finally released, before he actually was made president of the country. So imagine being like a political activist, getting put in jail for almost 30 years, getting released, and in short order, you're about to become president of the very nation that stuck you in jail. Okay, so he's walking out and he's looking at the guards who are about to open the door for his freedom. And he has this dramatic pause for himself. And he realizes that if he doesn't go through the process of forgiving his oppressors before he walks out that door, he will actually walk out of prison and into prison. He will be in prison forever. You don't even need lock and key anymore. He'll just stay in that same way of being, that same state, unless he forgives his oppressors. And wrongfully imprisoned for 3 decades is no small thing. It's massive. But a couple things I want to notice here. One, it sets the table for him to be the people's leader, for the people to go, that's who we want to lead us, because this seems like a better way. Okay, and I promise everybody's going to come back to worry in just a second, but hang with me. So he sees the door, he goes through the process. He does it. The main thing I want you to recognize is something was going on for this man over those 27 years that set him up to see his path to freedom, real freedom, way beyond just the constructs of, a prison cell. And I would argue that while he was in prison, it's not a stretch to say that he might have worried for his family, worried about his future, worried about his lost years that he could never get back. And not just worry. Worry is one kind of easy label, but he also had good reason to be radically offended by the folks who put him in prison. And I want to suggest that there's a whole family, like a hornet's nest, of symptoms to a phenomenon that, again, to your question about further upstream, like what's upstream from worry? Well, I would argue that worry is a response to this upstream thing that we're going to talk about in a minute, but it's a response to it. It's a very natural default setting that humans can go to that is largely driven around fear. And it's that fear that invites us to make the wrong choice to default to worry, which is by definition impotent. Worry actually doesn't change anything. Yet in our bodies, in our physical bodies, it feels like we're doing something. And this is where we're misled. This is where we're tricked. But all of this begs the question, well, what are we trying to do? We're deploying worry to help us see something happen. This is your question. Like, what are we up to? Why are we so interested in using a tool that we know doesn't work, that we know can't get us what we want? But the question is, what do we really want? Does that make sense? I'm articulating, it makes sense to me. Does that make sense to you as you're hearing it?
Yeah, that makes sense to me, because okay. I think that is that's what's so puzzling about this is clearly either we have developed this or evolved this kind of response, something, but like this is the strategy that we employ so often when we're faced with something that is beyond us. It's we fret about it, we worry about it in an effort to solve some problem. So yeah, I'd love to dig deeper into that. Okay, so everybody's clear. We deploy worry to get something, but it doesn't work. So let's get clear on what the something is. But big picture, setting this up again in the context of our conversation today, the everyday obstacle to human flourishing, one of them is worry. But the worry is a symptom. It's not a problem. It's a symptom. And the problem that's further upstream, what I want to assert, is that we are in this age-old human battle between order and chaos.
And when chaos presents itself, very discomforting chaos, the kind of like things happening to us, where we feel like a victim to things, it's very natural to say, I want control. And worry feels like I'm gaining control over chaos. I'm gaining order over chaos. And it's not true. It's a false positive. It gives you the impression of something when it's not actually true. In our family, we like our little line that we say all the time when we have the very natural experience. Again, I'm not trying to shame anyone for worrying. Worrying is normal. Mm-hmm. But whenever worry kicks its head up in our little family, our running joke is, why pray when you can worry? And we're a family who have kind of beliefs in that prayer, there's efficacy in prayer, that prayer can actually change things, that it actually does. Like, and I get those listeners who are like, that's bunk, that you don't believe it does. And in which case it would fall in the same category as worry for you. But the point is simply, our belief is we want to do something that does have efficacy, that does have effect. And we the joke, of course, is why pray when you can worry, is we forget the thing that works and choose the thing that doesn't work by default. And we make fun of ourselves. We go, oh yeah, that's right. Worrying actually doesn't help. Let's get to the thing that does, whatever you think that thing is. And I would argue that voluntary discomfort, or the stuff that we do at Men and Women of Discomfort, is these are experiments and efforts to try to do things that actually are efficacious towards gaining order, that actually do order things. So when things happen to us and we choose to lean into go towards the storm, or to do uncomfortable things on purpose, humans have the experience of agency. We have the experience of like, I'm becoming something even in the midst of something happening to me. And I'm actually unafraid. Remember that fear thing, that is the core of worry. I'm actually addressing that fear by walking towards it, by finding courage, having that embodied in my physical self and moving toward it. And this has this, it feels like magic. It's like this seemingly really uncomfortable experience that with just a little bit of persistence, it tips over. And a couple things happen. Number one, you have resource in the midst of it. You're not kind of frozen up by worry or running because of worry or fighting because of worry. You actually are in a place of like, no, I'm going to set aside worry and do some other things that actually will put me in a position of ordering chaos. And finding those things and building a practice, a set of habits that help inform your identity, these things work. So like, quick story that you're familiar with because we're friends and we talk about things in real time. I had this experience. Can I tell the Dallas story? Would that be okay?
Oh yeah, go.
Okay. So the other night, I have 4 children. My third child graduated from college in Texas. My wife and I and her siblings all went out to celebrate. It was really exciting. It happened to be Mother's Day weekend. She had been in Texas for 4 years. We had a bunch of clothes that I apparently purchased, I didn't know I purchased, in her home that we had to pack up and stuff in a car and ship a car out. And we were, again, celebrating Mother's Day and the travel in and out. It was just a lot of chaos going on. And in the middle of this, we had this amazing time. We had this incredible celebration. And we were flying from Dallas. My wife and I were flying back to Southern California to Orange County. My youngest daughter, who's still in college, was finishing up down in San Diego for her freshman year. So she is taking a later flight out of Dallas to San Diego. We'd already left and flown to Orange County, along with my daughter who just graduated. Another daughter went to Santa Barbara. Another son went to Sacramento. And everyone's going home. We just had an amazing time. We land in Orange County, and we get a phone call from my youngest daughter, who's still in Dallas, who is catching the late flight out. And she's in tears. And she says, I missed my plane. And I'm like, what do you mean you missed your plane? Like, you can hear the worry beginning to kick in because she's not been in this context before. She's going through the rite of passage of missing your first plane because she put her headphones on at the gate and they changed gates and then everybody moved and she didn't. She didn't look up. And all of a sudden she realizes everyone's gone. She runs to the gate. They had just closed the door. She bursts into tears. She's in chaos. She doesn't know what to do. She calls us up. So we don't know what to do either. We've never been in this situation. We don't know where she's going to sleep, all those things. And finally, we get very resourceful very quickly, but it was very critical. Like I could have gotten angry at that moment as a reflection of my worry. I could have gotten shaming of my daughter, which would have not been resourceful for my 19-year-old to hear that. I could, all these default settings, because I have these things in me, could have presented, and they didn't. Instead, I had actually been practicing for this very moment through things like, as crazy as it sounds, getting in cold water, holding my breath. I haven't opened up my kitchen yet. I'm a little grumpy. My stomach's grumbling, going through things like daily intermittent fasting, things like this, working out when I don't feel like it. All these things feel like kind of arbitrary. Why are you doing it? Well, it's because I'm practicing doing the uncomfortable thing so that when discomfort like this moment with my daughter happens, I have resource in me to not freak out. Okay. But my body is still worrying. Regardless of what I'm thinking, my body is reacting. I feel kind of sick to my stomach. Anyways, long story short, my daughter, Lacey, who had just spent 4 years in Texas, goes, I know people in Texas. She makes a phone call. All of a sudden, we have a place for her to stay at a friend's house, and she jumps in a lift, and off she goes. And we're like, bullet dodged. Aren't we amazing humans? This is incredible. I'm so glad I didn't worry. 30 minutes later, we get another phone call. My daughter's in tears again. I'm about to have a panic attack, Dad. I can feel it brewing. I lost my wallet. I'm like, what do you mean you lost your wallet? And she says, I think I left it in the lift. I'm not really sure. I keep calling the driver. The driver speaks a different language than English and seems to be antagonistic, that really upset with me that I keep asking where my wallet is or if he'll look around. And I happen to have my AirPod case in my wallet, and I'm watching it on my app drive all around Dallas. So she's pretty convinced the wallet's in the lift. But then all of a sudden it stops. It's not in the lift anymore. Or he stopped, or who knows what happened. But long story short, somebody starts swiping the debit card, and it's no longer in the lift. It's actually being used by someone, somehow, somewhere. And I'm freaking out as a dad. Internally, my internal world was like, I want control. I don't like how this feels. This feels gross. I actually felt physically nauseous, ill. And again, it wasn't cognitive. It was, my body was reacting a very natural way. And I had a job to do in that moment, which is get a hold of my body, even as my cortisol levels were rising. And sure enough, it happened. Like, walked through a serious process, made sure that I was showing up for her in a certain way that she could kind of, her not to peak, because the chaos wouldn't add more value. We're trying to harness the chaos. Worrying actually perpetuates chaos. That's not what we're interested in. We actually want effective ways to deal with it. So getting off of worry through a disciplined, uncomfortable exercise of keeping neutrality when we want to freak out and run around like our hair's on fire and just chill. It's not chilling. That's the wrong way to put it. It's harnessing the temptation to go nuts. And in that process, we had thankfully, it doesn't always work out this way, but we had the resources required for us to do a couple things like, how could, if she doesn't have any identification to get back in through security to get on a plane in the morning, that she needs to get back to finish her freshman year, what are we going to do? And by the way, she still has a roof over her head right now. She's actually in a safe context. Like, just naming what was actually so in the real world. Well, we took a picture of her passport, which we had at home, sent her a picture of her picture ID. Turns out that was enough to get through security. She gets on her plane, she flies home, she finishes her year. She's actually downstairs right now. Everything's just fine. But that night, and for the next 12 hours after, I felt like I got hit by a truck. My physical body just was banged up. I was kind of mad at everybody. I was mad at the Lyft driver. I could just feel it surging. And I realized the chaos I needed to, or got to actually go after, was my internal chaos. I was tempted to externalize it, make it all about here. But the truth was, my daughter was actually safe. And my body was still pretending like that wasn't the case. And I had a job to do. And if I was going to do that for the very first time in that moment, there is zero chance I would be able to pull that off. I actually needed to prepare myself in such a way that I had something I could do that would be helpful. And that's what played out. Now, this is a great little story because everything did turn out. And again, I want to be very sensitive to folks that are in situations where it doesn't feel like that's the case. But even if it wasn't the case, even if this was really terrible, like she got in a car accident or something happened, it still would make no sense to worry. It would actually offer no value because the control I was really seeking is only available when I have agency. So my job is to orient my life in such a way so that when these very predictable things start coming our way, because if they aren't happening for right now, don't worry, they will come soon enough. We have an opportunity between now and that moment to ready ourselves so that our response isn't to go to these default settings, but to go to these higher order skills, these capacities to deal with chaos in a way that is both gives you a chance at being effective and guarantee you will not feel comfortable as you're doing it. And that's the part. We're always drawn away from the discomfort. I see you nodding. Go ahead.
I'm so glad things worked out.
Thanks.
And I can relate to similar stories.
Yeah.
That being that person that has missed a flight or the baggage gets lost or what have you. I think what's resourceful is naming it a symptom, because symptoms still have utility. I think oftentimes we can like throw the baby out with the bathwater.
That's right.
Abolish all worry at all costs. If you start to feel it, ignore it, numb it, whatever. And the pendulum can swing the opposite direction.
That's right.
This is why people end up doom scrolling, is because they're so uncomfortable with even that stimulus, the worry itself, or think it's a thing to feel bad about, that they numb out, they run away, they avoid. And I think that in itself creates its own set of problems. So the fact that it's a symptom that points to something larger gives us an opportunity to realize, oh, there's something going on here. That's right. And I think what you're speaking to, the practices of stepping into situations like this, or practicing and kind of changing how you relate with that experience, gives you that necessary buffer, that pause, the wherewithal to kind of step back and then move forward with like intention. And I think that's something important. So often I see in my own life this ignoring, thinking that this is resolution by stepping away, by not worrying, by avoiding this at all costs. It actually has created bigger problems. That speaks to kind of the upstream that we were talking about.
I love that, Mitch. So if the goal is to not worry, what we're not saying is be in denial that you're worrying.
Right.
Because the worry itself is kind of an early warning system that you need to deploy something to deal with that symptom. Right? It's the same, like if you have a fever, the fever's not the problem. The fever's telling you something's up. Pay attention.
Yep.
Do what's required to help you with that situation. And if you just mask the fever, you're probably not going to deal with what's really going on.
Yeah, and might actually make it worse. Because you're going to push yourself that much more, or
that's right.
Whatever, and not give yourself the necessary rest or whatever you need to take care of your body. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the last thing I just want to kind of point out here is I think a subtle kind of adolescent wish that a lot of humans navigate is this dream that chaos isn't coming. That we, gosh, I've had a lot of hard things happen in my life historically. Maybe I'm done with those, and I'm just not going to have any more. And I don't think that's a helpful way at all to relate. And you won't have to live in fear that things are coming. It's kind of like, that prayer that people have in desperation, like just make all the pain go away. Well, what about the alternate prayer of like, God, help me to be strong enough to deal with whatever comes my way. And to be that, to get strong means you're doing something to strengthen, right? It's to practice. And if we have agreement that we live in a rugged world where things are coming our way and life is hard. M. Scott Peck says life is difficult in his first line of his book, The Road Less Traveled. And anyone who reads it takes a deep sigh because you're like, yeah, life is hard. Even if I'm experiencing a great moment of sunshine in my life, we say it all the time, give it a minute. It'll get rainy soon enough. And we don't say that because we're curmudgeons. We say that because that's reality. And when we relate with reality as it is, like that old Norwegian line of, there is no bad weather, there's only bad clothes, get clothes for the weather that's coming. So hard things are coming. Chaos is coming. You're going to have a default response called worry that will come your way. And when it emerges, be ready. How do you get ready for those things? Well, I think there's a lot of ways to get ready. And I would love to actually hear from our listeners what they're doing in order to do that. Because I think it would be helpful. And I don't look totally like they could give comments if they want, or they could reach out to us, hello@mwod.io, or if they're a part of our community, they should bring it up in the context community. But just to recognize we're going to respond to chaos in some way. And if you all have a better way than the one that we have, we'd love to hear about it, because we'd love to join you. Because we're all interested in the same thing. We want the best way to deal with this phenomenon called being a human being, and set it up in such a way that we're flourishing. But the way that we have discovered great traction has been this idea of, what if we start before the chaos comes? What if we invite a little chaos ourselves? Not to be like ascetics and be like beat ourselves up, and like it's not lost on me that people in our community smile and laugh a lot, even while they're suffering. Well, and even suffering, what does that even mean? They're not even well, they're getting a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I think that's telling, because when real things happen, and they do happen in our community, we have people who deal with cancer. Like our origin story, my best friend Tim, when we started this thing at MWOD, he dies from stomach cancer. It was terrible. And so we're not in denial of the hard things. We're actually saying we're not afraid of the hard things. We know they're coming, and we're willing to dance with our fears, as Seth Godin says, not just try to pretend like they're not there or hope that they'll never come again.
Yeah. So we talk a lot about preparing for or choosing voluntary discomfort and navigating that. That's a lot of what we do in MWOD. But what about the people that didn't choose it, that it's been thrust upon them, and they find themselves right now listening to this amidst involuntary discomfort, or what we call the whirlwind?
Yeah. So if that's you, I'm sorry. First thing I want to say, it's just it's terrible to experience real betrayal, real heartache, tragedy, whatever those categories connote for you in your real life. If you're under those things right now, I think it's one thing if you're not under those things and you raise your hand and say, I want to go do some uncomfortable things so I can practice in anticipation of those things coming. That's actually resourceful. But I think if it's coming at you and you didn't pick it, you don't have agency in it, you actually are objectively a victim to the things that are coming your way. Probably the best thing I can offer is to first acknowledge that's what's happening, to not pretend like it's not happening. But if you can somehow bear it, to see if you can't get a finger hold, some kind of traction in the direction of participating with it. If it's inevitable, stepping up to the thing and saying, I'm not going to pretend like you're not here. I'm not going to bow to you. What I'm going to do is stand in the middle of. We have this little anchor in our community called Stand Now. And oftentimes that's standing now in the face of the thing. You might even want to picture like you're in a very exposed area on the top of a hill or a mountain, and the storm is coming, and there's no place to hide. Stand up. And what can happen in that phenomenon, it doesn't always happen, but it can happen, gives you a chance of it happening, is to actually treat the involuntary discomfort as training too. Where, and again, I can't overly qualify my comments here because it could be, it is so insensitive. I don't know subjectively what the listeners to my voice right now are experiencing. So if I'm being insensitive, will you please forgive me? And would you consider people who do understand what you're experiencing and envision how your heroes in your space have stood up? How have they forgiven their betrayers? How have they courageously walked towards cancer treatment? How have they grieved with wholehearted commitment as they've lost something really significant to them? Those people actually somehow come out of those seasons better people, stronger people, more awake people. I know in my own experience with grief, the house of mourning, I don't ever want anyone to experience, I've said this before, I don't want anyone to put this on anybody. And yet, when I've grieved well, the house of mourning feels like heaven. It feels cleansing. It feels like it's terrible and beautiful. Not because I'm not cowering. I'm standing in the middle of it. So as imperfect and incomplete that language is, I want to suggest that there is the possibility of relating with being oppressed by standing up to the oppressor, by getting closer to the thing and not running from it. And if that just feels like too much, my prayers for grace on you. But in the meantime, would you consider that as a possibility? Some little act of defiance to the thing. See if that doesn't give you some kind of footing to navigate this present moment.
Thank you. And like you said, if you're not experiencing it now, just wait, just give it a moment. So I think, you're speaking to maybe someone who's acutely going through it right now, but also listen, because this is coming for all of us. Again, not as a downer, but as just, this is a reality of this broken life and world that we live in. And for those,
and that's why, like, if you're not under it, that's why this whole notion of like building a practice is so critical. Mm-hmm. It's coming. You don't need to be afraid. You can get ready instead. So as we learn this way of skilled living, if you have a better way than voluntary discomfort, we'd love to hear about it. And if you don't, I think you should consider this path. It's an unlikely one, but it's working for a lot of people. And we'd love it to see if it could work for you too. Men and Women of Discomfort is our membership community, and we are open to everyone. But keep in mind, our tagline is, it's probably not for you. If we're wrong about that, or if you want to find out for yourself, you can find us at MWOD.io.